Yeah, that's right, we are back. This week's been pretty exciting because I've started the rather daunting task of taking some of the tricks I've learnt in the shallow end of the pool down into the deep end. First trick up, the tail stool. Some of you have been kind enough to comment in and suggest I try some of the tricks I've learnt so far in the shallow end down in the deep end. I've been itching to give it a go, but it's my old friend the fear factor holding me back. So I thought enough is enough, I've got to make a start. I figured I'd go with the same process as I used in the shallow end. So start out learning the stalls and then convert those into slides and grinds. I thought I'd try the tail stool first. My rationale was you have to go up the transition fakie, so feel it out backwards, and also get comfy with perching on the coping right up there in the deep end, and also come back down the transition from the top forwards. I feel quite confident with the tail stool on the smaller ramps. I put a bit of work in just trying to get it a little bit more flowing and finessed, coming up, keeping it level, and then coming back in all in one movement. Even though the tail stool's a bit of a setup trick, I thought it'd be a good one because it would lead on to loads of other tricks, such as pivots to tail, little airs to tail, tail slides. Oh my gosh. For my first set of attempts, I decided on the strategy of dropping in from the deep end. I figured that'd give me a feel of the transition for the last part of the tail stool. Go up the waterfall, do a rock to fakie, and then come down and see if I could stick my back foot up there on the coping. Feel it out, go in there with full power, fight fire with fire. If I could get up on the coping with my foot on the back of the board, I could rearrange myself and get ready to drop back in. So with that goal in mind, I entered into my first mini battle. So it took me a good 20 minutes to get somewhere near a convincing tail stool, albeit right up on its ear with no flow and no style, just holding on for dear life as I came back in. Now the deep end of the pool is probably a touch under 8 foot and the tiles are vert, and that was the thing that was catching me out. So my first issue was coming up and trying to put the tail down prematurely, so the tail would hit the tiles instead of going on the coping. Now the biggest ramp I've ever done a tail stall on is probably around about 6.5 foot, and I think that's in my muscle memory as something that I would do on a bigger ramp. So I found I just needed to wait it out a millisecond longer. Also bend my legs up as much as I could, so as I came up onto the top of the coping, I was in a compact position that was less likely to fall off. And after quite a few tries, I managed to get up there so that my back foot was on the coping with the board. At this point, I kept on stepping off with my front foot, which was really annoying. And to try and counteract this, I implemented a little bit of a nose grab. Now I found the nose grab was quite comforting because if it all went wrong, I could grab hold of the board and throw it out away from me. My biggest concern with doing these tail stalls was being in a position where I toppled over and landed back on the board. Oh my goodness. Some of my worst slams have been bailing a trick and then unintentionally stepping back on the board. Everything happens pretty quick, no time to save myself, and the resulting slam is pretty emotional. I didn't really fancy that in the deep end, so throwing the board away and knee sliding seemed like a safe way out. One thing that was slightly against me was the wind was blowing the dogs off of their leads. So sometimes I just had to bail out of an attempt because the wind was blowing me straight back up that waterfall. When I eventually got the courage to stay inside the ramp a little bit, keep my knees bent and keep my front foot on the board, just trust that that tail would find the coping and that I'd be in a position to come back in. It was pretty exciting, and for my next set of attempts I wanted to try and finesse that, get it more consistent, and most importantly get it into a tail stall where the board was nice and level, not up on its ear, up and in one flowing movement come back down. Job's a good one. Okay, that's it for this video. That was pretty exciting. I found the main thing that helped me make it was to really commit and decide that I was going to make it back in. Through repetition, I tried to memorise the amount of speed and pump it required to get up there onto the coping. I also tried to keep my weight inside the ramp, not stand up too much on the top. Keeping myself inside the ramp helped the board to stay nice and level, just lap up onto the top and then come straight back in. And for the drop back in, try and keep my knees bent. I think one of the big bonuses of this practice focusing on the tail stall was it took my mind off dropping in the deep end and also doing the rock to fakie. So those started to become a little bit more second nature. I'm going to keep this deep end focus going. I think the next one is going to be the axle stall, then it's going to be the rock to fakie, and then I'm going to start doing some grinds and some slides. I'm also excited to try this new tail stall technique on even taller ramps with even more vert on. If you're new to the channel, feel free to hit subscribe. I make new videos every week. You can also follow me on Instagram at John Bishop Skate. As ever, my name's been John Bishop, and I'll see you next time.